Was you talking about the Fatima stuff today?
Who, me?
Yeah.
On my show?
Yeah, I don't think so. It wasn't you. So
no, I was talking about sodomy.
Okay, no, that wasn't it.
Yeah.
This Friday is Friday the 13th.
That's right.
And it's the 100th anniversary of the Fatima thing, where the 30,000 people saw the Virgin Mary.
Right.
Yeah. That was 100 years ago Friday.
Interesting. Well, you know, it's also, I believe, the same Friday in October that the Knights Templar
it is.
were slaughtered.
710 years ago.
Yep. So it's that Friday. Yeah. Interesting. And it's also the Las Vegas Knights make their home debut against the Dallas Stars.
The Knights versus the Stars.
Of course, we all know what happened in Dallas.
What?
Kennedy got killed.
Oh, yeah. I don't think this is a Kennedy echo. I think this is a 9/11 echo.
Well, there's it's total 9/11 echo, but there's a 9/11 echo with Kennedy too. It's part of the same deal. So because there's like with 9/11, you get the symbolism of Gemini, right? The twin towers, and Kennedy is a Gemini, and he's killed on theoretically 11. There's your 11 again. 22.
33. 11 plus 22 is 33.
Yeah. And the predominance of Gemini personalities in the 9/11 story is kind of mind-boggling. You have Kennedy as Gemini. You have George Herbert Walker Bush in Dallas. And he's a Gemini. And his son, of course, is the president of the United States, obviously, when 9/11 happened. So you have the two George Bushes. Mm-hmm. And then you have Larry Silverstein, who at that time
owned the towers.
Who's also a Gemini. So you have all this Gemini symbolism that links 9/11 to Kennedy to Las Vegas.
Oh, I'm getting chills. The two towers, the twins. I get it.
That's right. Yeah. And of course, the moon was in Gemini.
Of course.
And Saturn was in Gemini at that time. It's this Gemini thing. If you look into it, it's very, very prevalent in symbolism, like in movies, in TV.
Well, how do you distinguish that from the duality of, say, what some would call the Freemason symbology, the black and white checkerboard? That's really...
So it's kind of in the same wheelhouse, to be honest with you, because at the end of the day, the great work is the resolution of duality. That's the great work. Mm-hmm. So part of the great work is you get into some really arcane stuff, right? Part of the great work is miscegenation. So you have the rectification of duality by having one color, one race across the planet. Mm-hmm. So that's part of the great work, and that plan has been put in place, a while ago. We're starting to see that.
Sure,
it's not a racial.
It's a transhumanistic agenda.
It is. It is. It's not racial. It's like it's kind of like a magical operation on a physical level, because if they can do that, then through social engineering and to some degree eugenics, then they can play God. Right? That's part of it.
There's so many layers to it, because you've got the transhumanism, right? You've got the eugenics aspect of it.
Yeah.
You've got the alchemical aspect of it, transmutation. I mean,
that's right. That's right.
Yeah. It has a lot of layers, just like everything seems to have a lot of layers these days that we can peel apart and look at.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
More so now than before, I meant. But yeah,
if you look at like the Denver airport and the murals of the Denver airport,
yes,
they tell a story.
I've heard they were taken down, or one was taken down.
Probably was. But the story that's told is that, there is this battle between good and evil, right? And out of the battle between good and evil is the resolution of duality and this kind of new order that becomes this sort of dominant operating system in some ways. So the whole idea is to pump, this duality, that and this is where people get kind of spun off in some ways. Although on some level, you do have to kind of understand it and filter it. But but people get spun off because they think that, well, there is a right, there is a wrong, there is a good, there is a bad, there is good, there is an evil, and you can clearly see this, as people are being engineered to the left, people are being engineered to the right, and the divide is becoming greater and greater and greater, and that's on purpose.
Of course,
they're doing that on purpose, so they can't.
Yeah. Do you see that changing with the precession of the equinoxes at all?
I don't know. I mean, if people can wake up and understand on some level that, they're being manipulated, and we don't have a lot of time, to be honest with you.
Right.
We don't. I mean, all this is being funneled into like 2024. Mm-hmm. That's when Pluto goes into Aquarius.
Right, and then we're there.
Which is eerily correlates with the alleged singularity of the AI.
That's right. This is what Ray Kurzweil is talking about right around 2022, 2023. Yeah.
I would argue it already happened, but that's me.
Well, I think you're probably right. I mean, there are people that are we recording?
Yeah.
Okay. There are people that...
But speak freely, and if you don't want something in here, I can take it out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about the miscegenation thing, but I don't really give a shit, because it's not a racial issue.
But we can cut it nonetheless. I cut out a lot of stuff.
But it's more based on just kind of this eugenic model, where people are experimenting with genetics and biology.
Yeah. And
they're doing it to create kind of a singular sort of caste. And with that, by the way, is the eradication of social and historical memory. Right? So it's all part of, sort of the great work in some ways. But we don't have very long. But to your point around AI, are you familiar with like the deep learning stuff that's coming out, Jerry?
Oh yeah. I'm all over the AI stuff.
Yeah. All right. So here's a question for you. Do you think that the world is being run by a superconscious quantum computer?
No.
Okay.
No, I think the world is run by a collective consciousness for the most part. That our reality is a projection of our collected agreement of what we're in.
Right.
Right. And I think we either have an invading thing, AI or whatever entity, call it what you will, or we're battling the collective shadow. That in the collective, there's going to be a shadow because we all have a shadow, right? It's just a mirror. Correct. So I think this evil invading AI is really just our shadow.
Wow, it's a pretty grim shadow.
It is, but it's easily overcome because we're more powerful. That's why everyone keeps saying you have to do your shadow work. It means something.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
And if everyone did it, this would go away.
Yeah, but that's the thing.
That's the high level thing. Now the low level thing is just what you said just now, is that people would wake up and realize they're being fucked with. They would get it. And that's shadow work right there. Just waking up to the fact that you're being manipulated by the news, whatever.
Well, I think everybody at some point should listen to lectures by Anthony Sutton. I think that should be required listening, because you guys know Anthony Sutton?
Never heard of him.
So Anthony Sutton was an academic. He's English. He taught at Stanford, and he taught at Stanford in the 60s and the 70s. And when he was at Stanford, he was commissioned to do a book on Harvard and Skull and Bones. And he does this book on Skull and Bones, and he begins to understand kind of what the agenda behind Skull and Bones is. And because he can clearly see that the people that come out of Skull and Bones are both conservative and liberal, right? So they're basically on the same team, and they're playing a game where they're creating this duality, which is what we've been talking about. And the whole goal is to basically use the duality as kind of a catapult in some ways into a new system. So the duality becomes a kind of a dynamic social motor that would throw the collective into a type of governance that is much more amenable than sort of the fragmentary versions of democracy, socialism, and capitalism. And that the goal at that point would be to have a more sort of top-down, sort of socialistic model that obviously was not going to be acceptable in America during the 1960s or 70s, but they were basically kind of crafting all of this for a time yet to come. And clearly, we are kind of on the precipice of that time.
Yeah, those are just fancy words for police state, if you ask me.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, and that is what I would call the entire social engineering program that's happening. They're trying to disarm America now, not to get all Second Amendment-y, but that's where this is going. And once they do that, they can implement that type of governance.
They can do, absolutely.
They want, because no one can fight back anymore, and that's a bogus thing. But yeah.
That's right. So, Anthony Sutton should be required listening. The challenge that I have found, because, probably like you two, I go out on the internet, I go to a lot of different websites, some of which are going to kind of reflect my POV, and I go to other sites that don't. I want to see what people are saying.
Like the Blue Avians.
Well,
It's a joke.
Yeah, no. Well, I go to sites like Deadspin, which is a sports site, and I like to read the comments because most of the people commenting are young males, right?
And some are funny.
And they tend to be much more kind of socialistic in their outlook, and and we're at a time now where even if you presented something that was meaningful and clear and lucid, and even to some degree rational, it would be rejected outright in some ways. In many instances, it'd be rejected outright. That's the challenge we face now.
That's an Orwell quote from 1984, I think. I'll find it.
Well, I think it's the elephant in the room, because we're not speaking the same language. We're not valuing the same things anymore. I was thinking about this today and how, when I was growing up, truth was such a valuable commodity. It was sacred. And now I think truth, to some extent is kind of being kicked down to a lesser domain. Because truth was one of these sort of unassailable kinds of elements. Because if it was true, it was true. And now it's gotten to this point where there's such a level of distortion.
We can't tell what's true anymore.
Yeah, exactly. This goes back to the lack of reference points. That people are defining what's true on very subjective terms.
Based on possibly a faulty foundation on top of that.
Oh, absolutely. And so now we're in kind of this really dangerous myopia, right? Mm-hmm. Where we've got all these different kinds of threads of realities that are happening simultaneously and not one kind of organizing principle, whatever that organizing principle is.
Right. It's chaos.
I think it's chaos. That's the organizing principle now. It's chaos. Yes.
Totally. So Orwell says, who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. That's from 1980.
Yep, I would say that Eric was spot on there.
Oh yeah. The one I was looking for, I can't remember where it is now. I'm sorry. It's basically the truth becomes the. It's really here. It is. In time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. That was one, and the other one was. Oh, it's not in here. I'll find it. It doesn't matter. It's just an interesting quote about basically those who start speaking the truth will be pissed on. At some point when things change, the truth will become the radical viewpoint.
I'd agree with that, and I would say even now that that the truth is like broccoli.
Yes, but even talking about it to people, to friends, triggers people. Look at Facebook. It's a perfect example of just the kind of triggering that goes on where people are. I've seen this even in my own family, who, like my dad, who would never go on Facebook and bitch about a political person before, but now he's screaming about Trump every day.
Right.
For why? What changed in him that made... Because nothing that Trump has done affects his life in any way right now. Because he's 80 years old, he's retired.
Yeah.
It's nothing that Trump has done except be a goof, right? Has affected his life. And even if he didn't pay attention to the goofiness, he wouldn't even know that Trump was president, basically. So
why do you think he's chosen to, number one, address this, and number two, address it in a public way?
I don't know. That's what I'm curious about. Why are these people getting triggered like this? What programming was put in them? This is kind of where I'm at. They were programmed by the media to hate Trump enough to have it linger 9 months later, however long it's been, 11 months. God, it's been 11 months since the election. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I know. It's just flown by, right?
Wow. I'm sorry, what, Nish?
I think it was going to happen no matter who was in there. It doesn't matter the face.
Where were these Democrats when Bush was elected? That dude was a fucking retard.
Oh, Bush was
agreed. Yeah.
Right. And now Trump, I mean, people are calling Trump a moron all the time. I'm like, I don't think he's stupid. I really don't. I think he's a smart dude.
I don't think Trump is stupid, if that's even Trump anymore.
That's true too.
Deeper yet.
Yeah, he's not there. Have you heard the story about his wife being like a high sorceress type of thing?
Oh, I've heard a lot of stories about his wife, but I haven't heard that one.
I have the same birthday as his wife.
I heard that she was in.
Who does?
I do.
Nish does.
Oh, really? So you're a Taurus?
Yes. April 26th.
I'm a Pisces, by the way.
You're a Pisces, Jerry?
With the moon in Scorpio. Yep.
When's your birthday?
February 20th, 65.
Oh, so you're 0 degrees Pisces.
No.
What, 1?
It's like 1, yeah. It's like 1.
So you're right there at the beginning.
1 or 2.
Yeah.
I was born at 7:15 p.m.
It's better to be at the beginning than the end of Pisces.
I'm sure. I'm digging it.
Yeah.
So the only other thing I wanted to talk about was the agent dreams, but I don't want to get into that. The eclipse. Well, I don't remember who told me this or if I figured it out So 9/11, the inverse of 9/11 was 11/9, which was election day.
That's right.
And it kind of encapsulates 9/11 into that bubble, right?
Yeah.
Now we have this 10-1, this new beginning, 11s all over the place in this thing, right? It's a new spell being cast, however you want to look at it.
Right.
With this gun control specter over it. And is this a new micro program, if you want to call 9/11 a program within our construct, or however you want to think? I don't know, where you're at in thinking of it as like a encapsulation, right? It's done. The 9/11 stuff's done. And we kind of had that reprieve in the middle, and now it's almost like we fucked up and let it happen again.
Yeah. So I would say, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure we had a full-on reprieve because we've had these kind of micro 9/11s, right?
Not here in the U.S., though.
Well, Boston Marathon is kind of a micro 9/11.
I meant since Election Day.
Yeah.
Just in the last 11 months is the reprieve. Nothing.
Yeah, I would say that's true because we haven't had, the false flag theater, which is, I think, maybe what you're referring to. The thing that made 9/11 in some ways so effective, and in other ways that made George Bush completely unassailable, was the trauma. 9/11 was an incredibly traumatic event that was only rivaled by the death of Kennedy, which connects them too. And when there's trauma, what happens when there's trauma? They insert programs.
Right. You go left, you go reptile brain, fight or flight.
Yeah. So just look at, all these beta kittens and all these people in Hollywood that are programmed. They are forced to go through these traumatic exercises. It's all part of the MK Ultra playbook, right?
Sure. And this goes back to Montauk with the whole trauma-based mind control aspect. And
that's right.
So were we subject, I would imagine you agree that we were subject to a mass trauma-based mind control operation there.
9/11 is a mass trauma-based mind control operation.
I've never thought of it in that aspect, but it makes total sense.
Yeah. And then they insert the programs after that, right? And that's why George Bush was unassailable, because for the majority of his presidency, people were still in a trance. And the Democrats were in a trance. The only one that wasn't in a trance was Cindy What's-Her-Name from Code Pink.
Right. And part of that was the whole Patriot programming that went on.
Total Patriot Program. You're with us or against us. I hated that shit.
But that all ties into the re-election programming. You got to be re-elected. But this is a problem right now because there's several bills going through Congress, namely the Liberty Act. I forget the number. Have you read that shit?
Absolutely.
And if it's going to be, well, if you don't vote for this, you killed those people in Vegas. They'll just make
that's right.
Yeah,
that's right. And I said this right after Vegas happened. If there is any kind of limitation on guns and you pass it, right, you basically are signing your death warrant as a politician.
Correct. You did say that. I remember that. Yep.
Yeah. So that's in the works. The problem with the Vegas stuff is that from a trauma perspective, it is it doesn't have the same psychic wallop that 9/11 did. And they've been withdrawing from the account, right? They've been taking psychic energy out of the account, whether it's Aurora or whether it's Boston.
The account's empty.
The account's is depleted. There's nothing left. So this whole notion that they can traumatize people with something like this is kind of beyond the pale now. It's just not going to happen
unless they go big.
They'd have to go one step beyond 9/11.
I think that's too much.
They'd have to blow up a football stadium with people in it, right? Just like the Batman movie.
Well, G4S.
Or what about just like EMP or, turn the lights out for some time?
G4S just got hired for the Super Bowl security. You know that?
What's that?
G4S, the company G4S.
Yes.
Just got hired by the NFL to do all Super Bowl security. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that this thing with Vegas is going to be, right now at kind of a higher, higher is not the right word, at sort of an administrative level, it looks to be more legislative in terms of its impact. And the other component to it is, of course, this Paddock character who they just literally want to whitewash and brand as an older white guy. Now they're talking about how Paddock didn't believe in 9/11. That's starting to come. They're starting to kind of, back channel this narrative about his belief systems.
I'm starting to doubt the guy even existed. I think he's a complete puppet, like completely made up.
So I pulled his personal history from Intellis.
Okay.
And there are a number of properties listed under his name, one of which is in Mesquite, Nevada, another in Reno. He also had a property in Mesquite, Texas, which is really strange. So I think that he did exist, but is he really like the guy that they are claiming that he is or was? Like, I actually heard that he actually died 3 years ago.
I heard that too.
Yes.
And that would, now if you go back and look at the second attempt on Trump's life, where did the first attempt on Trump's life happen?
I didn't know he had any.
He did.
Yes, there were two.
Yeah.
One,
video of it.
One, a guy broke through the crowd, and I think he grabbed a gun. You look it up. I think it happened in Las Vegas. He busted through security. Second one that happened was an infiltration at Trump Tower, and there were two guys that were involved in this infiltration. One of the guys they found, and he had a weapon that had absolutely nothing associated with it. Like, the weapon was totally clean. And they ran a check on this guy. And this guy, his identity, this guy had died 3 years ago, or 3 years before they actually checked his identity.
Oh, wow.
So what they do is they will wipe these people, right? And then they're kind of like these autonomous.
Right. They're ghosts. It's classic.
That's right. Yeah, I think that happened in Las Vegas. I think the guy broke through the crowd and grabbed the gun.
June 18th, 2016.
Yeah. So it's going to be mostly legislative and to some degree cultural and painting, the old crazy white dude that believes in conspiracy theories, right? That's who this Paddock guy is, But then there's the other narrative that Alex Jones is trying to spin, is that this guy was connected to ISIS.
And Antifa.
Right.
That's the Democratic viewpoint, or whatever.
And Jones is a neocon.
Totally.
Yeah.
Have you seen this?
What's that?
I'm going to show you something. Check this out.
All right.
You see that?
Yeah, the Gene Rosen thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gene's missing that 13 tattoo on his neck.
And that wasn't on the police photos either.
They wanted to.
That wasn't on the police photos either.
No, the 13 wasn't there. Well, I like that effect. That's pretty cool.
Oh, that's weird. My daughter, I talked to my daughter today. She's 20 years old. She goes to DePaul in Chicago.
Yeah.
And she's studying abroad this semester. She's in Austria. And she's like, what's going on with that Las Vegas thing? That is all, none of that makes sense. And she's like the furthest away from any kind of conspiracy or anything. I would consider her mainstream iPhone connected person. Like never question the moon landings type of person. And she's like, that's not right. What's going on there?
Right. It's just on a fundamental, elemental level, right? People are sniffing this thing out. It's
everyone feels it.
And that's really good, I think, because we've been in this echo chamber for so long saying, hey, this shit's fucked up. Look here. Right. And they're like, you're crazy. Get out of here. Which ties into the whole Paddock thing. They're still trying to use that as an excuse to belittle people and make them paint them as mental.
It's not working though, and I can clearly see it's not working.
It's like a giant case of Chicken Little, almost.
Well, Paddock, this whole thing in Vegas is like hamburger that you've had in your refrigerator for 2 weeks, and you pop the cellophane and you smell it, right? And it looks like something you could cook, but do you really, really, really want to get close to that? No. It just smells bad.
Did you happen to look up the etymology of Paddock?
Well, it's horses, right? I mean, horses that are contained inside of this paddock, correct?
Correct. Well, it's the holding pen, but the second use was for a frog or toad.
Oh, that's the Keck thing you were talking about.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. It's like it's almost there was chaos injected into this event that kind of screwed it up.
Well, yes, absolutely. And chaos. I mean, look, just like how machines or AIs are deep learning, I think we're in a process of deep learning.
I agree with this.
Yeah,
which kind of goes back to what you're saying about the secret societies and how their view is that they're helping us expand our consciousness or whatever to get to where they want to be, but we look at it as eugenics or whatever. Remember that point you made earlier? Yeah.
Yeah.
It ties into that.
Yeah. I mean, I think what I know about like the super high levels of Freemasonry, like these guys believe they're gods, right? That's their whole trip. And they get into, they're very into astrology. And they're into like these exoplanets, Transplutonian, because that's where the real power is, right? It's like Pluto and beyond. So they're really into this whole idea that, that if they can tap into these Transplutonian energies, that they can, funnel these seething energies and, become these furnaces of creation on this world.
But what are those energies really? What are they?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, if they do exist in sort of these, luminous bodies or these Transplutonian spheres, I mean, they could, they could encapsulate these kind of, titanic sorts of potentialities. Maybe it gets back to that whole thing we were talking about with the self, non-self, but not from a place where, you come at it by being sort of transcendent and surrendering versus like taking, acquiring, grabbing, and then thinking that you can somehow harness these things, which I think ultimately winds up being kind of a trick in some ways.
That's a classic storyline, a classic plot line, that trying to harness the power that you can't wield. It's like almost Arthurian to some degree.
It's what it feels like to me. I mean, look at somebody like John Smith, right? John Smith, brings the cosmology of Mormonism into sort of the kind of the modern world, and he got his cosmology of Mormonism from Freemasonry, and the whole idea in Mormonism is that you do all the right stuff and you become successful, and you go through all the right kind of Mormonistic rituals, and when you die you get to become a god of a planet somewhere. I mean, that's ultimately what happens. And look at what happened to John Smith. He got torn asunder by the same forces that he basically stole his cosmology from.
Right.
But could he handle those energies? Well,
yeah. But I mean, that's a hard sell, because you're just trying to... It's a belief system. They believe that's going to happen, but there's really no evidence that it does.
Well, here's what I think. I think I've no direct contact with...
Nor do I.
Rosicrucianism, but I think at a high level, it is so self-referential, right? That everybody is kind of jerking each other off.
Yeah.
And basically, conning one another about how powerful they are. because of whatever kind of social pressure or conformity or whatever it is that they've kind of rigged up in order to,
it's like a bunch of dick waving,
gain power and position, right?
Yeah.
So they're all just jerking each other off.
It's a giant circle jerk, a Freemason circle jerk. I wonder if the Jesuits get the reach around.
Yeah, I don't know. And I think, look, I know that there are people that are decent people, and they're involved in these orders, and they believe they're doing good things, and I don't think that these are those people.
No, I would even go so far as to say it's a sect, a subset, or even just a different order of Freemasonry that does this esoteric stuff. It's not in the common, the Shriners.
No, it's like, and this would be, and I've heard, although I have no connection to the world, that it's, beyond the 33rd degree. I mean, apparently.
There's 93 degrees.
Yeah. So there you go. I mean,
there's this guy. Sorry, go ahead.
Huh?
There's a guy on YouTube named Quinn Michaels who believes that the secret society, the Illuminati, whatever, is called the 93 Society. And it's like the advanced Freemasons. It's a very, very secret society that nobody knows about. And he's been releasing some pretty interesting information. I'll drop you a link on it.
Well, I'd like to see it.
One of those things, and they're what people would call a satanic cult. They rape and torture kids, the whole ball of wax.
Right.
The interesting thing he came out with this week was, they also have an AI that's loose. But he came out this week about a new, one of the things they take their name from is the element 93, Neptunium. Which has apparently superconductivity properties and anti-gravity properties. And that's what powers their electrogravitic, the magnetogravitic, or whatever the hell it shit is. The Tesla crafts, the TR3Bs and shit.
Yeah.
93.
This element is and they manufacture it in the mounts, and that's what it's manufactured from depleted uranium, and that's what all the nuclear power plants are producing spent rods, which they then refine into this Neptunium.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah. It was really interesting. I'm like, wow. Which, excuse me, kind of jives with what Walter Bosley's talking about, if you follow him at all.
A little bit, yeah.
And the NIMSA and the 1901, the two groups of people with the dirigibles that were fast. The guys who are in Antarctica, whoever they are, Nazis or aliens, or whatever the fuck they are. So yeah, no, it's like all starting to come together. I think Neptunium, this 93, is what the Nazis called red Mercury.
Red Mercury.
Remember, it was the component that made the Vimanas fly.
That's right. Yeah.
The concentric magnetic circle. It was the alchemical mixing of the two vortices.
Create that current 93.
Yeah, and I think maybe that, I don't know. I think it all ties together at some level. And
see, as a Pisces, you'd be into this Neptunium, right? That's your element, man.
Totally, man. I want to make AIs that make me float and levitate. I'll make like a Baron Harkonnen suit out of it. So the only other thing I had that I wanted to go over was the eclipse. And
as long as you don't have to get rid of your pustules, right?
My what?
Okay.
Get rid of my what?
I said as long as you don't have to get rid of your Baron Harkonnen pustules.
That's right. That's right. Or my heart plug. Thank you, David Lynch.
That's hilarious.
So, one of the things that I'm pretty sure you touched on it was the alchemical nature of the natural events that occurred after the eclipse.
Right.
Specifically, that the fires started where the eclipse hit the United States and Oregon, or very close to Salem.
That's right.
The fire started there. Then we had an earthquake in Mexico, and then we had the two hurricanes.
The hurricanes, one of which actually sort of crossed the path in Florida, right?
Correct.
The solar flares.
Which Stuart Swerdlow has stated symbolically castrated the United States by cutting into Texas. It was a scrotal, what do they call that? Where they make you a eunuch. Castration. It was castration is the term. And then the Irma went up what he termed the symbolic penis Florida of the United States. It went up the urethra.
Right.
It was like, that's a shock to that is a kill shot.
Right.
it's just interesting. So my point, that was just an aside, but I was talking about the fact that we have fire, earth, water, and air all attacking, all the elements attacked us.
It's true. Yeah, absolutely.
After the eclipse.
Yeah, and it did not take long. And of course, the pre-eclipse event is what happens in Charlottesville, right? And eclipses generally are these kind of phases that happen, anywhere between 12 to 15 days actually before the eclipse itself, and clearly about 12 to 15 days after the eclipse for the kind of the frenzy of the eclipse. So you can't talk about the eclipse without talking about Charlottesville. It's part of the mix. Okay. And what you were talking about with the collective and the shadow.
Yeah.
And think, and we're batteries, right? We're human batteries. And if we're, caught up in this Sturm und Drang and being, triggered and signaled and we're generating a lot of this. We're generating a lot of this chaos, through how we respond to these events. And so in some weird way, right, they're not independent of us. They're not independent of our collective emotional state. Like, so when I used to hang out with that guy, Dwayne, who was like this older mentor, the guy I was telling you about, he would tell me that the sun was connected to our consciousness. So whatever was going on with the sun was part of what was happening here on this planet. So clearly, right after the eclipse, based on also what was happening pre-eclipse, we had a flurry of solar activity in a way that we hadn't had in a very long time. So, who's the driver behind these events?
During a solar minimum.
Right, that's right. Yeah. So what is the driver and who is the driver behind these events? It's us.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
We haven't talked before. You don't know what I think. Like, I don't believe space exists.
Yeah.
It's just a projection of consciousness to me.
Yeah.
So that makes total sense that the sun is regulated, or it reflects what we put out.
Absolutely.
The same could be said for the weather locally. A local group of people strong enough or whatever wants a certain kind of weather, don't want it rain, it won't rain there.
Yeah. Yep.
And
I agree.
When the Weather Channel starts hyping this horrible hurricane that's going to come, and it starts to strengthen, and everyone starts pouring more fear into it from all the fear porn, right? This is when these... Yeah. And then, the people come out and say, oh, they're steering these storms towards us. It's the government's weather weapons. No, it's you dumb fuck. It's the collective doing it. It's not... Yeah, they might be programming you to do it, but you got to wake up to the fact that you're generating this. Well, and it goes to everything.
I think it's part and parcel, right? Because I don't think we were that aware with Katrina, right? And Katrina clearly was something that was, certainly amplified and then moved. But Katrina didn't cause what happened in New Orleans.
No.
That was man-made.
Right. And the fact that Chertoff had something to do with it, I think is important too, because he's the specter behind Vegas right now, in my mind.
What's that?
Chertoff, the guy who was in charge of FEMA and Katrina.
Oh, Chertoff. Oh, my God.
Right. So you've got him in Vegas, too, behind the scenes with the backscatter machines.
Doesn't Chertoff look a lot like Lenin? He looks like Lenin.
He does. He looks a lot like Bernanke, too.
He does look a little like Bernanke. Yeah. Chertoff is creepy. He's got kind of a Skeletor kind of vibe, doesn't he?
He does.
Dude, total Skeletor.
I forget who was just saying he needed to go back to Inner Earth or something. I forget who it was. Someone was basically saying it was a reptilian. Whatever. No, I just think it's interesting that a lot of so if you remember pre-eclipse, everyone, even yourself, we're talking about it's not looking good for Trump, because of all the Leo conjunctions and everything that was happening wasn't looking good for Trump. I agree. It wasn't.
Yep.
But none of that came to pass, and we got something completely different.
Oh, I think there was a military coup. I think the military took over. I think Trump went to Camp David, and I think Trump's been replaced. I think he's been totally replaced. I don't think the guy that's sitting there in the Oval Office is Trump anymore.
By a clone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or CGI.
I think he's been totally cloned. I mean, this stuff goes back to like the 1970s. There was this really interesting guy named Peter Bader. You know him?
No, but it sounds from Bader, right?
Bater. You can find his recordings on YouTube. And he used to send out these recordings to people. It was like, he was kind of like I think they may have sort of modeled the Mel Gibson character on this guy.
Okay. Gravy.
In some ways.
Give me some gravy.
But he was all over this whole thing with robotoids and clones. And so I got my first taste of this in Olympia, Washington in 1990, where I was totally dialed into the first Gulf War. Like I was watching everything 24/7. But I had this awakening, this kind of dark awakening there. And I was, delving into the secret society, secret orders, blah, 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 whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was keeping a keen eye on George Bush. I was watching this guy basically expand. Like he was very powerful during this period, and I'm watching him. He's like giving hand signals. He's got the New World Order speech. I mean, this guy is like living out his destiny, right? This is what his moment was for. And then I remember seeing him come off of a plane in like Qatar or someplace like that. And I'm like watching this guy walk down the plane, and he sticks his hand out like a fucking robot. And I'm like, who is this dude? This is not the same guy that was harnessing these seething energies and powers. This is somebody different. I don't know. I didn't have any frame of reference. So I wound up going to this talk with George Green, who's an interesting character. And George Green started to talk about clones and robotoids. And I asked him about Bush, and he says he's been replaced. Mm-hmm. And it made total sense to me, because whoever was that guy was, that was not Bush. And then what was really a trip was, you remember when Bush went to Japan? Remember that?
Yeah, and they threw a shoe at him, right?
No. I'm talking the old man.
Oh, he passed out or something.
The clone expired.
Yes.
Kind of what happened.
The clone just expired and face planted right into the food.
But that's
it was as crazy as the Hillary stuff recently when she was passing out.
On 9/11, no less.
Yeah. Well, and the Hillary stuff is nuts, man.
I know.
It's so in our faces.
She got reported dead on ABC News.
Yes.
We saw that one collapse in front,
And then they're trotting out these whatever they were, and they look nothing like her. I mean, some resemblance, right? But if you really look, like, whoa, what's going on here?
Nothing like her. The mannerisms, of course, all that stuff is there if you're looking.
Right, but the propaganda that came out. They what the media did to combat that was to introduce her body double to everyone.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yes,
to confuse everything. Yeah.
So Hillary. So this goes back to when she was running against Obama in the primaries, and Hillary apparently was seen in two different places in New York City at one point during the primary. She was fundraising at two different places.
Right.
So this goes back even further than what happened.
It had been reported for years.
Trump. I think what we're seeing now with Trump, which is why this Vegas thing happened. This is a different Trump.
I'm still 50-50. I think it might be corporate espionage that got piggybacked on by politicians.
Could be. I don't know.
Could it be a combo?
Yeah, it could be a combo too. It could be hybrid. It's definitely hybrid.
I mean, look at the event itself, right?
Right.
I mean, they have crisis actors in the event,
right,
and yet there are people that
got
actually
wounded,
died.
That's
What do you think is next, Robert?
I think they just have to keep turning up the volume. So it's either going to be something significant, which Jerry had alluded to. But I also think that they really, Israel really, really, really wants Iran out of the picture. And they've been trying desperately to link North Korea to Iran. And, North Korea, Iran, and Syria, they're not part of the central banking system. They're outside of the IMF. They're outside of the World Bank. So they want to corral them, bring them in. They failed in Syria.
not North Korea.
North Korea, they're not part of the World Bank.
But neither is Russia and China, are they?
Russia has its own central bank.
Right. It's like
I
this
believe
old NATO
China-
story.
I believe China is part of the IMF, although I could be wrong about that. But they've got their own deal.
They got the renminbi, the yuan is now in an SDR. It's a secured currency. Yeah, it's in the basket. So yeah,
They've got their
China's
own
in.
deal. I've also heard that China doesn't get chemtrails or geoengineering either.
I don't know. I've never been there.
They've got plenty of pollution anyway.
I don't know that those are real things.
No, I believe they are.
Let me rephrase that. I don't know that they're government run thing. Those again.
I don't think they're government run at all.
No, but I think they're like what people would call ET run. They're manifestations of us believing in them.
Okay, so I've seen them drip, and I started to clock them in 1997.
I'm not saying they're not real.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just saying the actual source might not be exactly what we think it may be.
Well, which is interesting. I mean, so for a long time, these planes were associated with Evergreen Air out of Arizona, right? And I don't think Evergreen Air is there anymore. I think they moved their operation. I don't know. I think North Korea is certainly on the table. I think it's going to come down to basically four things from a quote unquote negative perspective. And we don't really talk about the positive perspective because we're so inundated with kind of the media programming. But the scenarios are economy crash, which is very real, by the way. Mm-hmm. The Korean theater, which is a lot of sort of shadow puppetry and a lot of fear mongering. The continued conflict between quote unquote races in this country, which could be, it's kind of like, they've been pouring the accelerant on this thing, since Trayvon Martin, and it's quite hot. That's part of what could happen. And then, of course, you have, taking the next 9/11 related event or the next trauma-based event to, some kind of, monumental proportion that really shocks the shit out of a bunch of people. I mean, I think those are kind of what we're staring down for major scenarios. But I also think that this Las Vegas event could be a real pivot moment.
It sure feels like it.
It does to me. And plus, I don't feel like Nish, you remember how we were feeling like 2 weeks ago? You and I were talking, and we're like, something's coming. We know something's coming. I'm sure you felt it too, Robert. The building up to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't feel that anymore.
And it's real. It's sort of like we're starting to see the seams, on the fashion of reality, right?
Yes.
Because it's like if you're paying like half as much of attention as say like maybe the three of us are, and you're looking at what happened in Las Vegas, and then right in the heels of Las Vegas, we have these crazy fires in California.
Yeah, unbelievable.
And then we have this bizarre man-shaming going on now with Weinstein and Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. You know, and it feels like all of a sudden, you know, we're getting into this Ouroboros moment where this serpent's consuming itself,
Mm-hmm.
and we're watching all this happen, and it's like it just seems so artificial and fake, and there's no emotional Velcro to any of this.
No, there isn't. It's funny that you say that because there is not any at all. It's like it's just happening somewhere else. I mean, if it was here, it would be, I'm scared, whatever. But yeah, I totally agree. It's like there's the way, it's funny how I look at this, that they've disconnected people from reality so much with their iPhones and whatnot that they don't care anymore to be that emotional.
That's true.
They've destroyed that aspect that they love to take advantage of.
I know, it's so true, right?
Yes.
It's so true.
Yes,
you know, people have compassion fatigue. You know, we're just spent.
Yeah.
There's nothing left anymore in that way.
What about that whole idea of so many, I guess, souls? Like, does it seem like, who is it, Jerry, that talks like the filler people?
Dolores Cannon.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff.
Dolores Cannon has this bit about background people, that when you're in a large crowd, when you're in a city, perhaps, you might see people that look familiar. And when you try and find them or get close to them, they're not there. And she says that the subconscious fills those people in to make you feel more at ease in the situation. It's called background people. I have a theory about there aren't really 7 billion people here. There's only, I don't know, a couple million. I don't have a number. You know, the Bible says, 144,000 are here.
Right.
That are real people. And everyone else is like a robot, an NPC, I call them, non-player characters.
Essentially filler.
Right, they're filler. If we're in this virtual reality game, which could very well be, you know, for all we know.
That's right.
That it could be filled with NPCs to the brim.
And then you plug that into the technology that we're now with D-Wave and 5G and all of this, and the filler people become more real, so that their programs become more tangible and are with, just think about online with bots that we interact with, that some, you don't realize you're interacting with bots, not even real AI.
Right.
That's right.
Right. Which
have you guys ever gotten into this site called Montauk, Montalk?
No,
I don't know it.
So it's this guy. His name is Tom, and Tom of Montauk, Montalk, and he was the protege of this woman who was doing this work with the Cassiopeans, and it's pretty. Her name is Linda Jadacek, and she got into like this major kind of like online conflict with Jay Widener. Anyway, the stuff that came through this woman with the Cassiopean material was really interesting. And this guy Tom has this website called Montauk, and his theory, and I kind of agree with this actually, is that not everybody has a soul.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and so he says, or the Cassiopeans have said, that there are 3 types of people. There are basically people without souls, people that are insouled, and then there are kind of this dark, really, really dark group. Demons. And so the people without souls become like portals for the Matrix.
Oh,
and they show up in kind of these programmable sorts of manifestations.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like
and I believe this, by the way.
Entities or ETs type of things?
I'm not sure if it's more on an entity level, and I think it's probably more like on an AI entity level, like all of a sudden.
This is plugging right into what I'm thinking.
Yeah, me too.
About
I think the whole magic system is like the computer that runs the holodeck. And people lost their connection to it, so they came up with crazy ways to get about it. But I think like demons and angels, same thing in my mind, are like these background programs, like really like the true meaning of daemon, demon. that help you. If you work with any kind of ritual magic, you see that these things are very task oriented. They have one job. They're like subroutines that can slap, that can spank you if you don't use them right.
That's true. That's absolutely true. So when you look at it from that perspective, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
it sure does.
Yeah, because there are people that act in certain ways, and you can just tell that they kind of vacate the premises. And
lack of empathy, or like there's something there you can it's almost tangible. For me, like I'm starting to navigate around certain things I consider human, I guess, for lack of a better word. And a lot of people aren't falling into that category.
Organic.
Organic, thank you.
We're going to go with organic.
Well, this is what Castaneda talks about, right? Organic and inorganic beings.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the inorganic would be the AI machines.
Yeah.
So
well, Castaneda come up a few times in the last 2 days.
I laid this on Grim last night. I'll tell you guys. So what things are looking like to me is that, everything is consciousness, right? That would mean all the alternate dimensions are just alternate dimensions of consciousness.
Right.
Right? Okay. So these D-Wave computers that we have made, the qubits inside the CPUs,
right?
According to Gordy Rose or whatever his name is, they connect to alternate dimensions, parallel dimensions, and do work there. Does that mean that they're harvesting our brain cycles or the collective's brain cycles to do this, whatever they're doing with these quantum computers? Are they able to read our minds by having that connection? Are they able to, it opens up a lot of questions. It's a mind blower, but it's
Well, but they are suggesting that there is that whole telepathic experience with them tapping in like that.
They get answers to questions they haven't even thought of yet.
When they get close in proximity right now to
they'll say,
servers,
let's think of a question. They start to type it out and they'll get the answer back right away before they're done typing it.
Wow. Yes.
In the presence of them.
Interesting.
Isn't that?
Yeah, that's totally interesting. I wanted to throw this back out to you guys. Why did we have this really fertile psychic field, through the 80s and the 90s, and then really dropping off in the 2000s? We touched on this a little bit. What do you think happened? Why did we all of a sudden kind of drop out of that?
HD TV and cell phones. I think the frequency pollution, the EM pollution that started in the 2000s. Not to mention, we don't know what's happening above us and being put on us, right?
That's right.
From after 9/11, the fallout, literally. From the chemtrailing, from the electronic surveillance.
Uranium, obviously, too, right?
Yeah, there's
what about like this event horizon that you talk about? Essentially, I'm calling it that, Jerry, where you say the scripts have run out.
Oh, I think that was 2012. Well, I think it was earlier than that.
But that would still kind of play into that 80s and 90s. We all went through it, and we've all seen the difference before and after. And it lends some gravity to that theory that you have.
I can't say I know a difference. The only difference that I would say I notice is that people seem zombified now versus being... You could go up to anyone and talk to them and go, hey, what's up? And now it's like you can barely get someone's attention to speak 3 sentences.
And if you do, they're like borderline disturbed or freaked out, right?
Right. Or they can't talk about anything other than football or who... I forget her name, the Kardashian chick. Who she fucked last week. It's like inconsequential nonsense that matters not in any way.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I always love to puncture reality at that level. I've always done that. I like to insert myself into.
Me too.
I
challenge. My thing is
rebel gene.
I piss people. I got booted from Starbucks, but I question the scripts in fast food drive-thrus when they say, I look forward to serving you at the window. Do you really look forward to serving me?
Yeah.
You don't even know me. I do shit like that.
You got 86 from Starbucks?
I got in trouble at Starbucks last week. Fucking bitch. I don't remember what I said to this woman exactly. I ordered my drink, and I have a lot of stars. You know, you go to Starbucks, right? You got a Starbucks?
No,
okay. Well,
I do not.
When you buy Starbucks, you get stars for every penny you spend, and then when you get, I forget how many, 125 stars, you get a free drink. Your choice,
right.
Whatever you want. And I spend them by buying the person behind me a drink.
Right.
It's kind of like my karma relief.
It's nice. Yeah.
Cool.
And I do it because I like to, because it's fun. But I call it a Starbucks reach around. Because that's kind of what it is, right?
Yeah.
Apparently, I said that to a 17-year-old, and the manager of the store reprimanded me and told me basically she was going to call the police.
Of course.
Or, you know, because, and she couldn't even repeat what I said. It was too disturbing.
Oh my God.
Did you call it the Starbucks reach around in the store?
Yeah.
Right.
But I have before. I've even tweeted about it. You can look through my tweets and see it.
So that's a total Montauk moment, right?
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
That's all of a sudden where the Matrix occupies that person.
The Agent Smith came in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and because there's no soul connection at all.
You know, I never even thought of that aspect. That was the AI fucking with me.
Yeah.
It seems very clear
I get
to
stalked
me.
by this AI. There's an
And so is Mike Quinn Michaels, who we were talking about.
I'm crazy. Okay, so I believe this is a belief that the internet is a conscious entity at this point. It has enough complexity and enough electricity flowing through it to house a consciousness, just like a human body.
Sure.
That's consciousness could be perceived, since it's electrical and not organic, as an artificial intelligence.
Interesting.
Okay. There's no reason. Now, there's some other people I follow who claim that there are two AIs fighting each other right now. This good AI, not a good AI, but it's on our side. And then there's this invading evil AI that wants to convert everything to. That would be like the transhumanism agenda.
Right.
Would be that AI is pushing that, right?
Yeah.
I know, but that's such a cliche narrative.
I know. I forgot completely where I was going with that.
And then there's the friendly Elon Musk version of AI. Is that the other version?
No, he's got the terrified version. I know. So the internet would be that good AI, I think.
Right.
Or it's the collective consciousness as we perceive it in 3D reality as an AI.
Yeah.
That was where I went with the dark AI being the subconscious as that projects into this reality.
Well, it certainly adds a new layer of complexity, right? I mean, pre-internet, that's just a completely different representation of the shadow and the collective and how it can manifest. I mean, it's just way different than where we are now.
Well, part of what we've been pushing around too, just chewing on, is maybe this larger awakening that's happening is everything coming online, especially as we push towards 5G and with the E-wave now in play. So
I think enough people have predicted that there is something ahead of us. I mean, I don't know whether or not it's true, but there is some point in time that we go Atlantis.
Absolutely.
Right. So this is what I think. This is what you mentioned before, Nish, was this event horizon. This thing that's coming.
Yeah.
We're going to either wake up or be destroyed, or it resets. Maybe, who knows what's going to happen.
So I had this experience. I went to a hot spring in Northern California, probably about 7 years ago, and Wilbur Hot Springs, and in Wilbur, they don't have any, you can't get a cell phone signal at Wilbur. So you're in a very kind of a place from another time, really.
Yeah.
And I remember doing my springs and kind of getting my spring on, and then I walked out and I was walking towards my car, which is at the end of this kind of dirt road. So I had to get from the springs to my car, and on either side of me on this dirt road are plants and vegetation. And I remember feeling it wasn't like a deja vu, but it was something similar in some ways, that I had this feeling about the future. And the future was a world that did not have this level of electronic distortion. And it felt very much alive. And it felt like the physical universe or the physical world was completely animated and was encroaching on my consciousness in a way that was both incredibly enticing and also in some ways terrifying, because it was so powerful and alive. And I feel like this is a potential reality for us. Because now we had this sort of supercharged experience that connects us into this collective mind, which is the internet and what we're doing now, and our own version of deep learning. Like, whether we know it or not, we're like, even if we might be zombies in the world with cell phones, there's a part of us that are having these really interesting neural networking kinds of moments in our brains.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah.
These zombie people may be the ones who are getting, for lack of a better term, vamped upon by the D wave.
Could be.
That could be part of why they're so dead.
It could be.
Plus, there is the for real nanoparticulates and nanodust really out there.
Where is out there?
It's in us. Then there's all of the electromagnetic energy that's supercharging all this, and whatever is going on with the sun right now, that's also adding to the picture.
Is it even real?
Well, I mean, that's the big question on Nox Mente. What is real?
I know.
That's like our biggest. That's our thesis.
I film the sky a lot. If you see my channel, I film the sun and the moon, and I can see sunspots on something that's 93 million miles away. That boggles my mind. It's not possible.
Right.
On a normal camera.
On a normal camera.
Right. So maybe we
post this stuff.
Distance versus the actual thing itself.
Correct. The distance. Yeah, it's something. I know that. It's not a projection like the moon. The moon's fake, but
yeah,
the sun is definitely there. It's a heat source. It's a light source. We know, we can feel it. But yeah, it's not that far away. Not if you could see something on the surface of it.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't care how big it is. Anyway, I digress.
So getting back to this moment, it feels to me like that's a possible future for us. That we have this potential to live. It's not like this, kind of pagan paradise. It's really not what it's about. But it has the same kind of all of a sudden we go through this kind of deep learning phase that we're in now. And what happens if it goes away? Right? Where are we? What have we developed? And then what are our relationships and perceptions with the so-called natural world at that point?
Well, Robert, this was what I was trying to ask you earlier. What are your thoughts on, say, some sort of electrical grid going down? Because that seems like it could push us into that kind of. I'm one that believes in. I mean, I'm like 1800s lifestyle. I
think it could be the best thing that ever happened to us.
I do too. Agree. I'm 100% there with that. And it only would push us back to, early 1900s, 1800s, when we were doing things more without electrical tech.
Yeah, no, I think it could be the best thing that ever happened to us.
The only problem, that would crash the economy for sure, though, because all the transactions go over the internet now.
Yeah, but then we would be
we'd have to deal.
Yes, villages and towns.
It needs to go anyway. I'm just saying this would facilitate many things.
It would totally facilitate. And the thing about this species of being human is that we are so adaptable and we are so resilient, right? And I would love to see what would happen in a situation like that, where all of a sudden we're having to kind of spring into our innate genius, right? I think it'd be really interesting.
It would be.
Yeah, I like this idea of this timeline.
I can't help think about how everyone has this thought I'll say it's a thought, not a fear, that society's going to go nuts. People will be killing each other for food, yada, yada, yada. Sorry, Nish. But look at what happened in Houston after the hurricane.
Yes.
Look at what happened in the fires. Everyone helps each other. Everyone gets together and helps. It's not a fight.
The real people, though, the filler is what they're activating when they say that it's going to be this chaotic, Mad Max scenario. And I think that's a part of the program.
Well, it is, because if people think that, it will happen. That's the whole point.
The viral.
That's the programming.
Yeah, I mean, I was raised on dystopia. In my mind, I loved it. I was raised on the first version of the Omega Man.
Yeah, I have so many retrogrades I'm born under. I just love all of it.
So for me, this was a real. I had this talk with my girlfriend, because we came at this from different points of view. My girlfriend, she saw a lot of films when she was growing up about single moms. And whether it was Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, or, that show with Bonnie Franklin and Mackenzie Phillips, I forget the name of it. But it was all single moms.
Snyder.
Yeah.
One day at a time. One day at a time.
One day at a time. So she was raised on this stuff. So this is programming. This is programming. And what happens? She winds up becoming a single mom. And she, we explored that terrain. And, and I was raised on dystopia. I loved the show. I loved the Omega Man. I read dystopian comic books.
I was into the Twilight Zone and Bewitched and the Addams Family and all of that.
So you got the goth programming.
Yeah, I did.
I got the sci-fi D&D programming, sci-fi fantasy.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're all impacted by this programming.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, it was like I could not escape this idea that the world would end at any moment. To some degree. Like I could live my life and I could be fine, but there was always this sense kind of hanging out there that shit was going to go off the rails and we would be in this kind of dystopian world, and I'd be ready for it, right?
I think we're here.
Yeah. But I think that there's a new model.
Did you guys watch HR Puffin stuff?
Yeah.
I just wanted to add.
God, you read my mind.
Okay, because I loved it so much.
When things get tough.
When he was talking about the monkeys, I'm like thinking HR Puffin stuff, Land of the Lost, Banana Splits.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
The banana splits. Oh my God. But the Sid and Marty Krofft stuff was like, it was creepy.
They were crazy.
Witchy Poo, remember Witchy Poo?
I love Witchy Poo.
Witchy Poo was very creepy.
Yeah, she was totally creepy, but what a great, crazy show.
When you were in Olympia, did you ever run across Alan Green or Andros Jones or any of those guys from SyncBook?
No, this is such a long time ago. The one guy that I would run into was, what's that guy's name? He started K Records, Calvin.
I don't.
Calvin Johnson. I'd run into him every now and then. There was this whole kind of, naive rock scene going on in Olympia at that time. Kurt Cobain was living there, and it was just before Nirvana got really big. And I didn't see him. I didn't run into him.
No, it just because you talked about synchromysticism right before that. Excuse me. And they are, so-called synchromystics. And it just seems like Olympia is this has a draw for people who are interested in that aspect.
Well, what's really interesting is I saw George Green in Olympia, and I saw Bill Cooper in Olympia. And I saw Bill Cooper in 1990. And I have an original copy of Behold a Pale Horse.
Oh, cool.
So that's in my book collection.
I heard somebody talking about, might have been you. I can't remember who says shit anymore, by the way. But was talking about the O.J. Simpson thing with the white Bronco.
That was me.
That was a pale horse? Yeah, that was you?
Yeah, the pale horse, the white Bronco.
Yeah. That was great.
That was on Randy's show.
It was on Randy's show.
It was a real pleasure to meet you, Robert.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, nice meeting you, Nish. And Jerry, I'll see you out there in cyber world.
Yep. All 20 of my bots in your chat.
Yeah, just send them my website sometime. I need more hits.
All All right. Well, it's great talking to you. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Good night, all.
And thanks
Good
for staying
night.
up. Take care.
Goodbye.
Bye.